Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I wrote a musical. At my church, we have the privilege of doing a children's Christmas musical just about every year, and I have loved them since I was a little girl. When I was younger, I was in the shows. As a middle and high schooler, I helped with tech and then with choreography. And then as an adult, I've helped with choreography, I've assisted the director, and I've also been in a couple shows when we needed adult characters. And 2 years ago, we were doing one of the shows that I was in as an adult. And during Tech Week for that show, my mom and I were having dinner before rehearsal, and she mentioned how she thought the song Do You Hear What I Hear might make a good Christmas musical. And I agreed. I thought about it, there's a song that kind of has a story in it, and, there's different aspects of it, different characters, and I liked the idea, but we had to go to rehearsal, so off we went after rehearsal, but I couldn't get the thought out of my head of kind of these characters that could be part of this song, this story that could happen, this path we could follow. And backstage, waiting for my scene, I looked at our run sheet on the wall, the list of all the scenes and songs in the show, and I was like, that's all it is. Scene, song, scene, song, scene, song. I bet I could do that. So when the new year came around, I gave it a shot. All right. It's January 6th. This year, 2024, I am writing a musical. I'm writing a kids musical. I'm writing the whole thing, the script, the songs, and I'm gonna ask friends to play instruments. I have this vision of how I want this show to work. I've started writing it. I have 4 scenes. I started writing the first, so this week. So it's been 6 days. And I feel like things are going really well. I'm very optimistic, but it's only been 6 days. So we'll see how this actually goes. But the hope is, at the end of the summer, I can give it to the kids director at my church and see if she would want to produce it. Which, I don't know how fast these things usually get written. This might be a really fast turnaround. But my goal is to write a musical this year. So that was the plan. 1 year, from drafts to stage. All right, welcome back to I'm Writing a Musical. Here is what I think is the full first draft of the script. There's the whole thing. It took me only 2 weeks to write it, which feels really short. And then I've got the song chaos page with ideas and thoughts of how I want things to go. I also have bad demos of little bits of a couple things. So let me show you those. Hang on. Here's one of them. Bad news in Bethlehem. Bad news in Bethlehem. Bad news in Bethlehem. Bad news in Bethlehem. Tell me that doesn't slap. Things were moving surprisingly fast. I was setting aside just 20 minutes a day to work on it initially, but often spending more when I got in the groove. I kept having ideas that I loved, and writing this style of music was a new adventure that was so fun. I wasn't afraid to experiment and try new things. The next step? Legal. The song Do You Hear What I Hear, aka the title song of my show, is still under copyright. So I contacted them. It was get a free consultation. I was like, free consultation. So this guy named Tim emailed me back. And he says, we're at the point where we could ask for a custom license, which is what I would need to use the song. But publishers usually want licensed songs per production. But of course, if I want the show to be able to be published and out there for people to use, then you need a different kinds of license. The point is, musical updates, script still written, working on some of the jokes and stuff like that and just polishing it up. I have something for every song in the show. It is March 14. It's Pi Day. And I have the base of a show. I also knew that I couldn't do this alone. Enter Jeff Mercer. Jeff, or as I call him, Mercer, was my music teacher for most of elementary and middle school. He also has a lot of experience in recording and editing, which are some areas I'm a little less fluid in. At this point, all I had were demos of myself singing and playing the piano. I wasn't sure if they were piano parts or band parts. It was all just whatever was happening in my head, just anything I heard. So I started to flesh out the songs a little bit, the way I learned in my songwriting lessons in college. You put what you have in Logic, and then you just start adding things to it. All right, here's our rainy day musical update from me and the dog. I just now today sat down and put all the songs, or at least what I have of them, in Logic. Everything is in Logic in some way, shape, or form. So there's, I don't know if you'll be able to read it. There's all the songs in reverse order because I did them in order. Everything has a title except for one of them. Everything has an arrangement except for one of them, or at least the basics beginnings of one. And then we'll go to the studio and start actually arranging. It was around this time that I heard back from the licensing people. I had obtained the rights to the song Do You Hear What I Hear? Sort of. It was kind of a one-time deal, but I had it, so it was off to the races. I was orchestrating, can you call it orchestrating if you're not using an orchestra? And I started work on rhythm charts and piano vocal scores since I knew I would need those eventually. I worked with Mercer a couple times to talk out ideas and get advice on certain bits that just weren't working right, and got myself an accordion, which would later join the soundtrack in the process. Things really felt like they were moving forward. I was making massive progress, but I knew there was still a whole lot to do. I needed live instruments and final recordings, not just demos, but the demos were starting to sound good. Oh, this little sleeping child, God and sinners reconciled, and the world was changed that night when love arrived. Now this far, I'd been keeping the show a secret from the most important player, the director. But we were working on another show together that summer, and at a meeting for that show, she said that she had already picked the Christmas musical, and I panicked. It was time for the secret to be out, whether or not I was ready. So I contacted her, sent her my demos, and waited to hear what she thought. And then finally she sent me back her verdict, which was not this year. We couldn't do my show. There just wasn't time for all the recording and editing. The show wasn't done. It was already July. I needed kids singing the tracks. I needed the script read aloud. And it was really disappointing. I'd had this dream of going script to stage in 1 year, which honestly wasn't realistic. I understood that it wasn't ready. And I agreed that it wasn't ready. Oh my goodness, it was not ready. But it was really discouraging to get to that point and not get what I wanted, really. It was the right thing, and I'm glad I took the extra year to work on it, but at the time, I didn't want to work on the show. I was annoyed, I was sad, I ended up taking a couple weeks off. I thought I'll take a couple weeks, I'll take a month off maybe, and I'll come back to the show in a minute when I've got my new school schedule. I work for schools, and I kind of know what my schedule looks like now, and then I can sit and work on the show again and work on recording. But God had a plan for that fall also. I ended up not having the time to work on my musical because I was part of a different one. A Spoonful of Sherman is a show that chronicles the lives and music of the Sherman family, and I was given the opportunity to be primary pianist. It was literally a dream come true. I got to play amazing classic music by the Sherman Brothers. I got to learn new music written by their father, Al Sherman, and by Robert Sherman's son, Robbie, who's a current composer. I got to spend several hours at the piano every day. I was going to rehearsal several nights a week. It was really hard work, but absolutely further confirmation that being a theater musician is what I want to do and what I'm meant to do. I've never been part of anything quite as incredible as it. The show, the cast, I could have kept doing it for months. But it did have to come to an end. The end of Spoonful dropped me straight into Christmas, which is incredibly busy for any musician, and then Christmas led me straight into January of the next year, which is really busy for one of my schools, so I didn't even have time to be thinking about my show. And it was a really good time. I was doing lots of music, I was having a great time working on shows and work and everything I was doing, but there was this nagging fear at the back of my head that I hadn't touched my show in months, and what if I went back to it and I hated it? What if it wasn't any good anymore? What if I couldn't finish it in time again? What if this wasn't possible? What if this thing I'd been dreaming of and hoping for and working towards wasn't ever going to work? I had stopped wanting to work on it before because I was disappointed, and now I didn't want to work on it because I was scared. But as the new year continued, I jumped back in and got back to it. New year, new goal. I knew the show had to be done by July at the earliest or mid-August at the latest. The first step was writing a new finale. Do You Hear What I Hear was the original inspiration for the show. It was my original finale. It was going to be the title of the show. And that was all great, except that the license I had obtained was kind of a one-time use thing. And I really wanted my finale to be something that could travel with the show and not be a hurdle for anyone who wanted to do the show. So I decided, forget it. It's way easier than dealing with licensing to just write a new song. So I wrote Have You Heard the Word, which that became the title of my show. It became the line that could fill in a few missing lines throughout the show to give us one through line of the theme of Have You Heard the Word? And I'm really, really glad I did it. It's maybe the best decision I made while I was writing the entire time. So, with everything mostly finished, I was missing a few lines that would later get filled in, it was time to record. But there was a slight problem. To record, I needed charts, and to have charts, I needed a working software. I, like so many others, used Finale to write scores and rhythm charts, but sadly, the program was sunsetting. So not only did I have to finish all my charts to record and then finish making my piano vocal scores for the show to actually be produced, but I had to learn an entirely new notation software. I ended up learning Dorico, which is a different kind of notation software, and one a little more built for the digital age. I actually find it pretty intuitive. There's a lot of things that make sense about it. I'm faster at certain things in Dorico than I was in Finale, although that's probably also due to the use of using a keyboard instead of a laptop keyboard. Using a piano keyboard makes things faster for me because I think in music faster than I think in letters. uh, so that was a really steep learning curve of figuring out how the formatting worked and how I could get to do what I needed it to do, which was frustrating at times, but I'm really glad I did it because I learned a lot and I was able to successfully get everything ready to record. So, I had full demos, but nearly every electronic instrument had to be replaced with a real one. Thankfully, I know many excellent musicians who play many, many instruments. I started with the drums with Mercer. As it turns out, a lot of recording is just emailing or texting or brainstorming who else I can contact. Hi, would you be willing to play my show? Are you available this day? What about this day? Or this one? I got very good at keeping schedule straight, trying to find any time I could fit people in, because it's a lot of music, and I was trying to be as efficient as possible with my friends' time and my own time, because we're all very busy. Some instruments, like the piano and the drums and the bass, were needed on nearly every song, whereas some, like trumpet, I only needed once or twice. Mercer was again instrumental in making this possible, providing recording space, equipment, and facilitating when I was unavailable. I had co-workers playing, I had friends from church playing, I had people I've known most of my life playing, and it is so, so wonderfully kind of all of these wonderful friends to take the time to learn my music and make it a reality. But instruments weren't enough. I needed vocalists and I needed actors. Luckily, I work with kids and I know many amazing families and kids who were willing to work with me and to help me make this happen. I had rehearsals at my house and taught the music, but a lot of it was just the kids practicing and learning the music on their own. Mercer was once again incredible in his generosity and help. He helped me with setup. He had a recording space. We recorded at his church. All the kids had headphones. It was very professional. It could not have been better if I had dreamed it up. And the hardest part of collecting my recording cast was finding boys. I only needed 3. It feels like I asked 1,000 before I found 3 who were available and willing to help me with this project. But the day I recorded with the boys was maybe my favorite recording day of them all. We had so much fun. We laughed and we joked and they read their lines and we just had such a great time, and it was such a great reminder of why I love this, of why I wrote the show, and why I love working with kids and this funny little children's theater niche that I'm planting myself into, and how much it means to me and how much fun it really is. Meanwhile, life continued. It was summer by this point, and while all the schools I worked for were on break, my summer jobs were in full swing. So I just took the musical with me wherever I went. We took a vacation to Canada, and I was working on scores in airports on a train through the Canadian countryside. When I got back home, all the recording had to be scheduled around my ever changing work schedule. Anywhere I could squeeze a few hours in, I was recording, I was working. I brought the scores with me to our VBS at church. I brought them house sitting. I spent every moment I could checking off to-dos for every aspect of this show. It really felt like I was cramming it all in at the last minute, because I sort of was, but I was determined not to miss the deadline this year. The end was in reach. Just one step left. Originally, the plan was to have Mercer and Maddie help me with some of the editing. There were a lot of adjustments that needed to be made, and mixing and mastering is not something I have a ton of experience in. But as I was approaching the time that I would spend doing all this work, there was a slight problem. Neither Mercer nor Maddie were available. So I gathered my courage, dug out my notes from college, and gave it my best shot. I basically spent a week straight in Logic. I alternated between working at the library, where it was a little easier to focus, and my home desk, where I have nice speaker monitors to hear how everything sounded. My sister helped me listen through and make changes. I was able to send some of the demos to Maddie and get her opinion on things at the very least, but I did all the mixing and mastering myself, and I am very, very proud of that. Since finishing it, I've actually gone back through and done some remixing, listened to the performance tracks in the space where they would actually be performed, and had to make some adjustments based on things sounded there. But I am very, very happy with the final product, and very, very proud that I accomplished that. I didn't know I could do it, and I did. The final night, I loaded all my music files onto a flash drive, printed the script, printed the score, put everything in order in a binder. Had a brief moment of panic because I couldn't find some of the scores. It turns out they had been moved to a flash drive during the transfer from Finale to Dorico, so it was fine. Very scary, but fine. And that night, August 9, I held the physical copy of my show in my hands for the very first time, which was an absolutely incredible feeling. On August 10, exhausted and exhilarated, I handed the show to the children's director at church and vowed to do absolutely nothing the next day. A week later, it was official. We were doing it. Suddenly it was all real. There was a schedule and a production team, and they were having auditions, and I was watching it become real right in front of my eyes. I actually ended up modifying the script to fit this cast, and I'm really glad I did. I really feel like with the changes I made, the show kind of took on its final form, if you will. I had to miss a number of rehearsals for work, but I wrote the show with my church and this production team in mind. These are my friends. The way they do theater is the way that they taught me to do theater, and I knew I would love the final results, and I do. I had the opportunity to work with the actors, to talk with the kids about their favorite songs and the questions they had. I got to give a devotional where I talked through all the Bible stories referenced in one of the songs, Trust God, and what that meant for the kids as they're beginning their walk with Christ. Watching this show come to life has been an absolute dream come true, and I am so honored that my church chose to do this show, that the kids and their parents have spent the time and the energy going to rehearsals and practicing and making it a reality. I cannot wait for everyone to see it. It is my great privilege to say that Have You Heard the Word will premiere on December 13 and 14, 2025. I can't wait for everyone to come and see it. If you're available, please come see all the wonderful work the kids have put into making this possible. I set out to write a show about sharing the gospel, but along the way, God wrote a show about trusting in Him. It's my hope that Have You Heard the Word encourages you to look for the times that God has come through in your own life and reminds you of the incredible joy of the good news this Christmas. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Merry Christmas, and have you heard the word?